You think the prices around you are rising because of inflation. But that's not the full story. The truth is, one country has more control over the cost of your life than most people realize. Your groceries, your gas, your rent, your phone, even the price of the shoes you wear. And here's the scary part. Most people never notice it happening, because on the surface, it looks normal. But it's not. This is where it gets serious. Every time prices rise, politicians blame inflation, companies blame supply chains, experts blame wars, pandemics, or the economy. But here's what they don't tell you. There's one country sitting at the center of the entire global system, and if that country slows down, changes policy, or makes one strategic move, the entire world feels it, including you. Think about this. Why are electronics suddenly expensive? Why did car prices explode? Why do everyday products seem harder to afford every year? Because modern life depends on one giant machine, and that machine is deeply connected to China. Now, before people start arguing in the comments, this isn't about politics. This is about dependency. Over the last 30 years, the world slowly built its economy around one country, becoming the factory of the planet. Cheap labor, massive infrastructure, huge ports, fast production. At first, it looked like a perfect deal. Western companies could make products cheaper, consumers could buy more stuff, corporations made billions. Everybody won. At least, that's what it looked like. But this is where things start to go wrong. Because when one country manufactures a huge percentage of the world's products, that country gains leverage over everybody else. And today, China produces or processes enormous portions of the world's electronics, batteries, solar panels, pharmaceuticals, rare earth minerals, and consumer goods. Meaning, your daily life is connected to Chinese factories whether you realize it or not. Your smartphone, parts probably came from China. Your laptop? Same story. Your kitchen appliances, furniture, clothes, tools, toys, even ingredients in medicine. Connected. And this is where it affects you directly. Because when factories in China slow down, prices around the world rise. We saw this during the pandemic. Ports shut down, factories paused, shipping containers disappeared, and suddenly, store shelves emptied, car prices exploded, electronics became harder to find. Delivery times stretched for months. People thought this was temporary. But the pandemic exposed something much bigger. The world had become too dependent on one place, and once people realized that, governments and corporations panicked. But it gets worse, because China isn't just a manufacturing hub anymore, it also controls critical materials needed for the future economy. Electric vehicle batteries, solar technology, advanced electronics. Many of the minerals required for those industries are processed in China. So even if another country mines the materials, China often refines them. That means the global transition to clean energy still runs through China, and this is where the hidden layer appears. The real power isn't just making products, it's controlling the supply chain. See, most people think power comes from armies or oil, but modern economic power comes from controlling production. Who makes the parts? Who ships the materials? Who owns the factories? Who controls the ports? And China spent decades building dominance in all of them. Quietly, while most people were distracted by cheap prices. This is why your life became more affordable for years, and then suddenly started becoming more expensive, because the system depended on stability. The second that stability broke, everyone paid for it. Literally, this is why your groceries cost more. This is why your rent keeps rising. This is why businesses pass costs on to consumers. You're already paying for global dependence without realizing it. But here's what they don't tell you. The United States and Europe now know this dependency is dangerous, which is why companies are trying to move factories out of China. You've probably heard terms like decoupling, reshoring, supply chain diversification. Sounds boring, right? But these words could reshape your financial future, because moving factories is incredibly expensive. Building new infrastructure takes years. Training workers takes time. Shipping routes must change. And all those costs eventually hit consumers, meaning you. On the surface, it looks normal, but it's not. You're watching the global economy rebuild itself in real time, and rebuilds are expensive. Now here's the twist most people miss. China became powerful because the rest of the world wanted cheaper products. Consumers rewarded low prices. Corporations chased profits. Governments supported globalization. So the system kept growing. Every year more factories moved there, and slowly, entire industries disappeared from other countries. Manufacturing towns collapsed. Local factories shut down. Workers lost bargaining power. Meanwhile, corporations increased profits because overseas production was cheaper. This is where it gets serious. Because once a country loses the ability to produce important goods itself, it becomes vulnerable. Not immediately, but eventually. Imagine if tensions rise between major countries. Imagine shipping routes become disrupted again. Imagine another global crisis hits. Prices wouldn't just rise temporarily. Entire industries could freeze. That's why governments are suddenly investing billions into domestic manufacturing. Semiconductor factories, battery plants, energy infrastructure. Countries are racing to become less dependent, but there's a problem. China is still ahead. And not by a little. China has massive industrial capacity, enormous logistics networks, and years of infrastructure advantages. It's extremely difficult to replace quickly. Which means the world is stuck in an awkward position. Too dependent to leave. Too worried to stay dependent. And this is where it affects you again. Because uncertainty creates instability. Markets hate instability. Businesses raise prices to protect themselves. Investors react emotionally. Governments spend aggressively. And ordinary people absorb the consequences. You, your bills, your savings, your future cost of living. Now let's talk about something even bigger. Rare earth minerals. Most people have never heard of them. But they're essential for modern technology. Phones, military equipment, wind turbines, electric vehicles. And China dominates much of the rare earth processing industry, meaning future technologies still rely heavily on Chinese supply chains. So while countries talk about independence, they're still deeply connected. This entire system is like a giant web, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every product around you has a global story behind it. Your coffee maker might use materials from Africa, chips from Taiwan, assembly in China, shipping through Singapore, and sales in America. One disruption anywhere affects prices everywhere. That's the modern economy. And most people only notice it when life becomes more expensive. But here's the biggest realization of all. China didn't take over the global economy by force. The world handed over dependence slowly because it was profitable. Cheap prices created convenience. Convenience created dependency. Dependency created power. And now reversing that system could take decades. This is why economists keep warning about supply chain fragility. This is why governments are talking about economic security instead of just growth. And this is why your cost of living keeps feeling unpredictable. Because the global economy is entering a new phase, one where efficiency matters less than resilience, and resilience costs money, a lot of money. This entire system was designed for maximum speed and low prices, not stability, not independence, not security. And now the world is trying to rebuild the system while still relying on it at the same time. That's the contradiction. And this is where it affects you most. Because whether people realize it or not, we're entering an era where things may simply stay more expensive. Not because companies are greedy, not because inflation magically appeared, but because the world is reorganizing itself. New factories, new supply chains, new alliances, new trade routes, all of it costs trillions, and consumers absorb part of that cost. So the next time you notice prices rising, remember this. The story is much bigger than inflation. It's about who controls production, who controls materials, who controls the global flow of goods. And right now, one country sits at the center of that system, China. But here's what they don't tell you. The most important part of this story isn't China itself. It's how deeply connected your life is to global systems you never see. Your paycheck, your groceries, your rent, your future, all tied to decisions being made thousands of miles away. And most people will never realize why.